So it seems that it's time to start now. I'd like to start by welcoming all the speakers, but also all the participants to this session on sustainability awareness. It's been really great to see so many different sessions in the design conference talking about sustainability, and awareness is for sure one of the key areas that we still need to work on. My name is Daniela Pigosso. I'm associate professor here at DTU, the Technical University of Denmark, and I'm going to be the chair of this session today and help with the facilitation of the presentations and also the Q&A at the end of the session. Today we have 5 presentations, and they are covering a very wide range of different aspects. We have a representation from all the 3 continents. I'm from Brazil, so South America is well represented. We have Africa, and we also have Europe, Italy, with very strong representation. So happy to have you involved. The way it's going to happen is that I'm going to introduce one presentation after the other. And then at the end, we have time for questions and answers. I'd like to ask the audience to type in the questions in the chat as the presentations are shown, so that in the Q&A session, we can facilitate it together with you all. And I'd like to start then with the first paper, Advantages of 3D Printing for Circular Economy, Its Influence on Designers, by Youzhi Chen from the Polimi in Italy. So over to the presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Youzhi Chen from Politecnico di Milano. My paper's title is Advantages of 3D Printing for Circular Economy and Its Influence on Designers. Based on the theoretical research of 3D printing and the circular economy, combined with the case studies, this paper analyzes the advantages of 3D printing in realizing circular economy and its influence on designers from the perspectives of reduce, reuse, recycle, and distributed manufacturing. 3D printing has provided a more sustainable production mode for enterprise when there is unique advantages and has gradually become an important way to realize circular economy. Circular economy transforms the one-way material flow process into a process of repeated circular flow, from resource to products and then to renewable resource, realizing low input of resource, high utilization, and low emission of waste, thus reducing the conflict between environment and development. Circular economy mainly follows the 3R principle: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Reduce is the first principle of circular economy. It belongs to the input terminal and aims to reduce the use of product raw materials and the emission of pollutants. Compared with the traditional subtraction process, 3D printing as an additive manufacturing process produces products by stacking melted material and can directly produce parts of any shape from computer graphics data without participation of merchant equipment and molds. Reuse is the second principle of circular economy. It belongs to process and aim to prolong the service life of products. When the popularization and application of 3D printing technology, people began to notice its potential in product repair and prolonging product life cycle. 3D printing can not only repair damaged products, but also improve the use value of waste products. For example, in this case study, the designer used 3D printing as a DIY tools, transfer used bottles and cans into new daily necessities, such as a watering can. The project is open source. People can download and creating fields online. Recycle is the third principle of circular economy. It belongs to the output terminal and aim to recycle waste again to reduce the final use. At present, 3D printing materials are developing in a sustainable direction. In addition, 3D printing can also use recyclable biomaterial as printing consumables to avoid waste in the later stage, directly from the source of product production. For example, in this case study, the material is PLA. PLA is a degradable material. Distributed manufacturing means that manufacture with different production skills and in different regions establish cooperation to provide products or service that can quickly respond to market demand. As a small, flexible, and easy accessible processing method, 3D printing is easy to realize distributed manufacturing. The influence of 3D printing on designers. First of all, the reduced advantages of 3D printing requires the designer to master the technical specifications, working principle, and use the process of 3D printing. Secondly, the reuse advantages of 3D printing requires designers to master reverse engineering technology and its related engineering equipment and software. Finally, the recycle advantages of 3D printing requires designers to master some knowledge and skills in the field of materials and biological design. On the other hand, the distributed manufacturing advantage of 3D printing promoting the rise of social design and put forward higher requirements for designers' soft skills. In addition, the distributed advantages of 3D printing has also promoted the rise of independent designers and design brands. Circular economy is a fundamental way to solve the contradiction between economic development and ecological environment, and it is also a necessary measure to realize the sustainable development. With its advantages in reduce, reuse, recycle, and distributed manufacturing, 3D printing has promoted the transformation from linear economy to circular economy. As a technological innovation, 3D printing has also promoted the role transformation of traditional designers to design engineer, design organizer, and independent designers in the process of realizing circular economy. Yes, that's all. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Chen. Remembering the audience, if you have questions, please just post them in the chat. And now let's go to the second presentation, Design of an Intrinsically Motivating AI Experience for Environmental Awareness. And Monica couldn't be here today, but we have the two other co-authors of the paper, Elena and Sara. Let's have a look into the presentation.
Design of an Intrinsically Motivating AR Experience for Environmental Awareness. Monica Bordegoni, Marina Carulli, Sara Porro, Elena Spadoni. In the field of sustainability awareness and education, one of the environmental issues that need to be addressed is plastic pollution. The microplastic problem requires a systemic approach to be effectively understood and addressed. It articulates on different scales, from the macroscopic overview of global phenomena to the microscopic properties of the single plastic particle. Digital technologies can have a strategic role in addressing complex topics such as the microplastic one. They provide a powerful aid in visualizing, demonstrating, and emphasizing information in making knowledge more accessible. They allow also to make abstract thinking more tangible. Among the digital technologies, augmented reality is increasingly used in the field of individual education. AR has been adapted in the field of environmental education to inspire and spread awareness on environmental sustainability. These are some of the case studies that the authors selected regarding sustainability. Starting from these assumptions, the authors made the hypothesis that the use of AR can be beneficial for raising awareness on the theme of microplastics, to both improve the learning process and motivate the users to change their behaviors. We developed an AR educational tool to be experienced individually at home, named Resize Plastic. Resize Plastic has been designed and developed to provide a systemic overview of the microplastic issue, support users to understand its mechanism, educate users about their role in the system, allow users to connect this information to their everyday actions. The overall design activity has been focused on stimulating the user intrinsic motivation, which is one of the most important elements that affect learning activities and behavioral change. The main structure and interactions of Resize Plastic have been designed on the basis of challenge, fantasy, and curiosity principles identified by Dunlevy, 2014, and Malone, 1981, to engage and intrinsically motivate the user during the learning experience. Malone's production, 1981, identified the elements which make environments intrinsically motivating: challenge, fantasy, and curiosity. Similarly, Dunlevy identified 3 design principles closely connected to Malone's key elements: enable and then challenge, drive by gamified story, see the unseen. The Resize Plastic system is composed of 2 interactive elements: a paper marker made of 2 overlapping discs, a digital device with the AR application. The AR application can recognize 5 different configurations of the marker. Each of these configurations corresponds to the AR educational content related to the different levels of zoom on the microplastic topic. The user interacts with the physical marker and with the AR digital content displayed after framing each configuration. An initial tutorial explains to the user how to interact with the marker and provides an index of the experience. A voice track makes it easier for the user to acquire the information while interacting. The exploration of the microplastics is provided through a playful and interactive digital experience to stimulate the user's sense of challenge. A magical magnifying lens has been used as a metaphorical tool to investigate objects and information through the different levels of zoom. Resize Plastic takes advantage of the characteristics of AR to arouse curiosity in the user to facilitate the comprehension. Preliminary tests through questionnaires with 24 users have been conducted to investigate the effectiveness of Resize Plastic in communicating the information and improving the attitude and behavioral intentions towards sustainability. The subjects have been divided in 2 groups: a control group that acquired the information to a PowerPoint presentation, and an experimental group that acquired information to Resize Plastic. Resize Plastic has been perceived by the users as more challenging, engaging, playful, and useful than the PowerPoint presentation, and it has been associated with an interactive and colorful experience particularly suitable for a young audience. From the information collected through the questionnaire and the debriefing activity performed with the experimental group, it can be deduced that the applications of Malone's framework and Dallevin's principles to the design of resized plastic has aided in achieving the initial research goals. In conclusion, the analysis of the collected results demonstrated that resized plastic has succeeded in transferring knowledge to the users, and it has proven to have great potential in the educational field. Resized plastic was well accepted by the users, who considered it useful, interesting, and engaging. It succeeded in informing the audience about microplastics through an intrinsically motivating experience, providing fertile ground for sustainable behavioral change. AR has proven to be a promising learning tool which can give a joyful learning experience to the audience and motivate people to enthusiastically improve their behaviors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for a good presentation. And let's now go to the third presentation by Bernard. And he's going to discuss what are the challenges and opportunities for enabling mutual learning and collaboration in design and innovation for sustainable development in Africa and beyond. Looking forward to the presentation.
Hello, my name is Shibwabo, and I'm here to present challenges and opportunities from enabling mutual learning and collaboration in design and innovation for sustainable development in Africa and beyond. This is work that we've done as Africa Design, of which the co-authors are actually listed on the slide there. To begin with, collaboration and mutual learning is recognized as important to facilitate innovation and the exchange of best practices across different contexts. However, we know that there is an existing power differential that exists, to which then limits the flow of ideas across the various regions or continents. So this introduces a danger, which means that we can actually miss out on innovations and ideas that come from all these different regions. Then it also limits the opportunity that could be there for learning across various regions or various continents. Then there's something important is that design practices and research in Africa must actually be pursued based on the contextual aspects. So we speak about the environment, the people, and the future. Then in transdisciplinary research, opportunities for co-creation and knowledge sharing will actually bring the global relevance to Africa design. So we expect academia to play its ongoing critical role to ensure that this is achieved, and this then becomes the main aim of this paper, to ensure that we highlight the challenges and opportunities that exist around design and sustainability with and around Africa. So how we did this study was mainly through a number of years, just 3 years, whereby we've been collecting data around workshops that we've been organizing, 3 workshops, and a survey, whereby we've collected data and analyzed, synthesized, and then came up with some findings around the same. The findings have been categorized into 3 main categories, and that is education, design methods for collaboration, and sustainable development. For example, in education, we noticed that there are certain aspects there around a need to attend conferences or workshops, because these can actually be areas that can be used to disseminate and for mutual learning and so on. Then there are accessibility concerns around, for example, around learning materials and methods of learning and ideas around education and so on. The same applies to the other 2 categories, so sustainable development, sustainable behavior in that case. For the aspect of COVID-19, which was significant over the past number of years, has been found to introduce a number of items. For example, behavior around traveling, work, how work is done, and so on. So all those are some of the aspects that we managed to collect data around. And as part of our findings, we found that there's an urgent need to recognize education courses that incorporate sustainability in Africa and globally. Then moving away from the high-level concept of presenting sustainability as a high-level aspect that is abstract in nature, but then introducing the aspect of sustainability earlier in education, given that most of the data that we collected indicated that sustainability seems to be introduced a bit later. And then the aspects around COVID-19, which has actually facilitated collaboration around sustainable development and design, with some aspects which I'll actually go into in the next, just in the next slide. So under design methods for collaboration, collaboration and co-design are actually important in steering sustainable development. Information sharing, which is crucial to ensure that there is this mutual learning, and ways of learning that is problem and challenge-based learning, which actually promote the multidisciplinary aspects, can actually be crucial in terms of promoting mutual learning and collaboration around sustainability and design. Then in this case, there are some aspects that we've introduced, like the barazas. These are basically workshops of some form, which actually promote the aspects of mutual learning and collaboration, especially around design and sustainability. Under sustainable behavior, then we notice some social issues that need to be were highlighted. That is around circular economy. How Africa tends to be more or less biased towards sustainable thinking, but then we collect the data that we collected around the European respondents and the Americas. Then they look at waste management and dietary behaviors as what they tend to really focus more. And then a number of aspects around COVID-19, which is, in as much as it introduces, it promoted some aspects around ICT, we also noticed that some of the funding that was to be used and to promote sustainability and design may have been redirected towards addressing some of the COVID-related emergencies. To conclude is that education and social sustainability are very important to facilitate collaboration, and sustainable innovation and design require collaboration among global distributed stakeholders, so multi-stakeholder engagement across the globe. Yes, and then in addition to that, areas that seem to be of strength in various regions, which we could focus on. So we need to perform design and need to design and collaborate in a way that benefits all, or a way that is mutual. Then rethink of how co-design is done and the user involvement, and the fact that we need to target and ensure that as with the growth of the various regions, then there is more or less inclusivity and sharing of ideas and access to the ideas being promoted. Thank you. So the contacts are provided there. That is for Africa Design, which is the team that have been working on this. Thank you, and bye.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and also great to see the results from the Africa Design chapter, so super well done for it. Let's now go to the fourth paper, and this is about designing long-lasting interior products, emotional attachment, product positioning, and uniquenesses. And the presentation is by Andreas Bendixen from the Aalborg University here in Denmark.
Hello, I'm Andreas, and today I'm going to present the article Designing Long-Lasting Interior Products, Emotional Attachment, Product Positioning, and Uniqueness. And unfortunately, none of the authors could be at the presentation today, so I'll do it on their behalf. First of all, today we're going through the introduction, the design strategies, and the marketing strategies that this study is built upon, then the framework that was built around it, the methodology, the analysis, and then the discussion and conclusion. As all of us know, it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem with product obsolescence, and our culture around product consumption is a heated topic in most societies. A lot of researchers has already been working on this. This includes Kuba, Van Ness, and Kramer, and many more. And hopefully this article will contribute in the field of exploring all of this existing knowledge and could hopefully transfer it to the aid of designing long-lasting interior products. Throughout this article, we'll be discussing the design strategies versus the marketing strategies in order to improve the longevity of our products. So Anders Fogh has already researched design strategies for increasing the product lifetime and found these 6 different themes. The first one, adaptation focus, is about ensuring that the customers have enough possibilities for maintaining their products after they're purchased. The timeliness focus is about creating a product that has a low coupling to trends and fashion. The exclusivity focus is about making sure that customers treasure the product more, and this could be like creating limited editions. The emotional focus is about stimulating an emotional attachment between the customers and the design. The design process focus is about ensuring participatory design and involving the user on a higher level. And the use service focus is about sharing products. And this could be, for example, all the users sharing their cars in a smaller community. Pilo and Millet also researched the field around marketing strategies and found these 3 different strategies to increase the value lifetime of a product. Firstly, the product and brand history is a value tool as a marketing strategy, as an emotional bond can be created between the consumer and the brand over time, and thus increasing the brand loyalty by the consumers. Secondly, the price positioning. Products with a longer lifetime has to offer the customers more clear and apparent value when comparing them to products with a shorter lifetime, which is almost always also cheaper. And thirdly, there's a tendency for brands with lower price points to release more products each seasons, and the higher amount of new releases invokes a higher desire for replacement by the users. As a result of this literature, the team were able to make a model to assess the value lifetime of a product. So this framework is based upon the data collected at 4-month internship in 2 different companies. And aside from the observations during this period, 7 different designers from both companies has also been interviewed and being handed a questionnaire in order to get a wide range of opinions about both companies' take on sustainability and longevity with all the products in their portfolio. Through the data collected, 5 cases or brands from these 2 companies were selected based on their probability to offer interesting insights rather than represent a broader population. Each case were analyzed for the qualities regarding how well the brands are able to work with their emotional attachment, product positioning, and uniqueness in their portfolio. So through the analysis, the team found that 2 aspects of the framework wasn't represented in any of the brand cases, that being the use service and design process focus, which is highlighted. And this could indicate that these aren't significant for the interior design companies, and therefore they removed it for the revised model. For any future research, the team would like to encourage other researchers to test this model with other product categories or varying complexity or other technologies to further assess its validity. And that's everything I have to say. I hope you find the paper interesting. If you have any questions, I'll see if I can answer them.
Great. And Andreas is not here today. So if you have questions to this paper, I would encourage you to send the questions directly to the authors by email so that you can get the conversation going. Let's now move to the last presentation of this session. And this is from Matteo Vignoli from the University di Bologna. And that's about evolving the how might we, a tool to include the planetary boundaries. Let's have a look.
Welcome. My name is Matteo Vignoli, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Bologna and co-founder of Future Food Institute. Together with my co-authors, Sara Roversi, Xavi Giattuani, Margareta Tiriduzzi, and Costanza Finocchi, I will present you our human and planet-centered approach called prosperity thinking and the evolution of the How Might We tool in our process to include planetary boundaries. The literature stream on sustainable design is quite active, resulting in a list of 209 articles searching for words such as phase, tools, or methodology. Reading articles and abstract, we considered 43 articles and selected 22. Even though a lot of work has been done on sustainable design development, it was noticed that a standardized approach to unifying all the different contributions is still missing. Many authors also state that while presenting their methodologies, they explicitly suggest including sustainability from the start of the process, adopting a systemic vision and thinking in long term. Prosperity thinking can be considered as an evolution of the design thinking method proposed by Future Food Institute, having a particular focus on sustainability aspect. It is a methodological approach inspired by donut economics to designing a world that fulfills all its being needs within the planetary boundaries. It aims to enable the design of a better world, starting from a shared, inclusive idea of prosperity that encompasses economic growth and social and environmental well-being. One of the basic concepts behind prosperity thinking is acknowledging that it is necessary to change the way we perceive ourselves in the world we are living, moving from an ecosystem where humans are on top of a pyramid to an ecosystem in which humans consider themselves just as a part of a bigger world, where there are no hierarchies. Prosperity thinking is composed of three phases: problem framing, ideate and prototype, and test and analyze. In the first problem framing phase, tools used in design thinking are adapted in order to push the designer to explicitly include sustainability consideration. The second ideate and prototype phase consists in generating many different solutions within the planetary boundaries and social foundation. Finally, in the test and analyze phase, the designer tests the solution and analyzes future consequences while gathering important feedback. We applied the Action Research Innovation Management Framework to develop our methodology during 4 iterations of prosperity thinking. We conducted 1 prototype testing 6 colleagues, 2 online workshops, and 1 hackathon. These involved a total of 93 professionals from varied backgrounds, coming from 61 countries. The project started with the analysis and framing phase. We analyzed the evolution of design for sustainability methodologies to identify and cluster all the different phases and check the coherence with the step we have in prosperity thinking. This led to project planning by identifying a relevant field to initiate our action. Out of all possible fields, we identified the food sector as best candidate to start prototyping our revised How Might We instrument, since this sector intimately has significant implications for our planet. We started the execution of this action with 4 iterations of the initial How Might We statement in the context of FAO and Future Food Institute Bootcamp. This led to the reflection and learning phase. We collected 40 hours of observation, field notes, a survey for each workshop and hackathon participant, and a prototype feedback from colleagues. And finally, the communication and pivoting phase. All the meetings to develop prosperity thinking as discussion for the reflection on the prototypes were documented with minutes and archived. We analyzed the 12 articles that were proposing processes going from 2003 to 2019, clustering the phases for similarity as reported in the table. All the processes described seem to have some common characteristic, with at least one of the phases structuring prosperity thinking, problem framing, ideating prototype, and test and analyze. This is indeed a validation of the structure of prosperity thinking, as well other sustainable design processes considered could be reported to the 3 phases. We were interested in the tools belonging to the first phase, and we clustered them according to their scope, trying to understand if they are used to research, analysis, mapping, framing, or problem definition purposes. As you can see in this table, we could not find in sustainable design literature any tools for problem definition scopes. That is why a new form of How Might We statement is proposed here to help designers concentrate on the formulation of the problem and avoiding jumping to solutions. From July 2020 to September 2021, we conducted 4 iterations and 1 pre-iteration of our human and planet balance tool, as you can see here. During the bootcamps, we use a 5-step methodology to collect all the relevant information to define a clear design challenge which takes into account the planetary means from its very beginning. The Human and Planet Balance Table is a tool which helps the designer to consider all the stakeholders included in an sustainable event on the left. These actors can be both those who actively concur to it, but also actors that apparently are subjected to this. On the other side of the table, there are the planetary boundaries, social foundation impacted. In the middle, we analyze the action produced by the actors and their needs goals that drive this action. These steps helps us understand better the mental model of the actors, primarily explored in the previous phase of the design process. After filling the human and planet balance table, students are invited to create a human and planet balance statement. As we will see, this statement is an evolution of the how might we statement, using design to reframe a challenge and create new ways to approach it. In the human and planet balance statement, we have inserted planetary boundaries and social foundation, which need to be considered in the creation of a design challenge, all by satisfying human need. In the first iteration, we introduced the general need of having the planet in design challenge and tested a classical how might we problem statement. During this phase, it wasn't clear how to include the planet in the process of creating the design challenge. Statements were very generic and the needs goal remained broad. In the second iteration, we added the planetary boundary. Participants were positively inspired to action, but important problems in the creation of the trade-off-based challenge statement persisted. The need was often confused with an action to be carried out. In the third iteration, we tested the human and planet balance table and statement with a case study. Some participants didn't feel confident since they hadn't enough information concerning the challenge they were tackling. In the fourth iteration, we tested the human and planet balance tool in Pollica, Italy, in connection with the community. The resulting challenge were anchored to the local territory and considered applicable. The human and planet balance tool helps to target an innovation space with lower and upper limits. In this space, we aim at systemic change, moving from how might we, centered from the design team, to what conditions should occur for. This systemic condition require more research into the nature of the problem, legal, political, or industrial, in order to design a good project or policy.
Perfect. Those were our 5 presentations in the session. And I'd like to invite everybody that asked a question to join us in video and audio so that we can get the discussion going. And for the other participants as well, if you want to participate in the discussion, you are very welcome to join in so that we can share ideas and knowledge together. And while you are joining us in, I'd like to ask my first question to the first paper, and this is to Youzhi Chen. And my question to you is, it was really interesting to see all the different benefits of using additive manufacturing to circular economy, especially in terms of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And if I were to take the devil's advocate role for a second, what could be ways in which additive manufacture could actually hinder circularity and lead to a lower sustainability performance?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we cannot see you. Maybe if you can turn your camera or...
Okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Yes, perfect.
Turn on my camera. Okay, about this question. First of all, I think this is a good question because I didn't consider it in my paper. I think 3D printing also has a negative impact for the circular economy. For example, at present, many 3D printing material are still unable to be recycled. When their life cycle ends, they will still pollute the environment. Therefore, 3D printing material are very important for circular economy. I think we should develop and use more environmentally friendly materials such as PLA material. I mentioned this material in my paper. It is very environment friendly material for 3D printing, and it is not only realize the biological recycle, but also realize the technical recycle. So I think the material is very important for 3D printing, realize the circular economy, and exclude the material. I think the relevant service is also important. what is service? I think the service maybe is about material recycling service, because I think it will very helpful for the material recycling. Yes, this is my answer.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that the next two questions that we have to you, they actually go in a similar direction. So maybe Tim, are you there to ask your question?
Yes, I am, and I hope you can hear me. But it was very similar to yours, Daniela, actually. So thank you, Youzhi, for a nice paper and presentation. And mine was more about the actual printers themselves, and could they actually lead to more production and more products. I was also playing the devil's advocate, but I think it's very similar to Matteo's question about generally, are we assuming the sustainability benefits of 3D printing, or are we also measuring it?
Yes. I think the immediacy of 3D printing will promote distributed, local, and small-scale manufacturing. On the surface, it may lead to more product production, but it will also handle the traditional large-scale production, because when people start using 3D printing to realize distributed manufacturing locally, people's demand for products produced by traditional manufacturing mode will also be reduced. So I think 3D printing may achieve more local production, but it is sustainable compared with the traditional century manufacturing mode. Yes.
Yeah, and many people say that local production can actually be less effective in terms of how efficient the machinery is in terms of consumption. And I guess that's connected to your question as well, Matteo. Would you like to ask it, please?
The point is that the fact is local, so the cut in transportation cost, I think it's contingent to very specific situation. If, for example, I have to transport one part in a remote part in Africa and have a 3D printer there, maybe it's actually worth the effort if it's very close to the factory, or it's large volume transportation, maybe it's not. I think that the topic is really interesting, and maybe it goes also with personalization or things that is impossible to achieve with traditional manufacturing or very expensive. So probably like this sustainability goes in combination also with opportunities that you don't have. But I'd love to see the outcome of your research if you include all the dimensions that we consider in a sustainability analysis, also a strategic level. It's not, I mean, it's not needed to go at specific level, but maybe as a compass for people that need to decide whether to go to one option or another. So that's actually more a comment than a question, because you already addressed my point in previous comments.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, and I think that there might be applications where additive manufacturing is really good from a circularity and a sustainability point of view, but for some other applications, not as much. So I think that understanding what are the applications would be an interesting way to go about it. And I know we had a full workshop about additive manufacturing and sustainability on Monday. So I hope that the discussions there were also going that direction. Brilliant. Let's circle back to you again, Chen, towards the end of the discussion. But now I want to move towards the second paper and the questions that we have for you. And Tim, you have the first question there. What was it about?
Yeah, thanks first of all for a nice presentation of the paper. And you were focusing on augmented reality for mostly younger people in education. I was wondering if you'd considered it for not aged, but adults or professional situations in industry for continuing education. We need a real boost in industry in the capacity for understanding sustainability. And I know that here in Denmark, for example, we have many companies that have augmented reality setups already to train manufacturing people on the manufacturing lines, because it's more effective for them to do that, and there's a big turnover of staff. So all the equipment's there. I was wondering if you'd considered your case for industry for training on the job for continuing professional development.
Thank you so much for your question. I think that it's really interesting, also related to the topic of education and augmented reality, the link with the industry. Of course, in our application, the theme of microplastic pollution is addressed providing a microscopic overview of the phenomenon, more related to everyday actions. So the education is more linked to the everyday action of the user, but of course, the augmented reality can be really effective in the industry field as well, for the power of visualizing information, making the knowledge accessible, and also thinking about the industry and the possibilities of having difficult processes that can be hard to visualize. It can be really, really powerful. Maybe we can think about future scenarios of implementation also for the industrial sectors as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Nicola, thanks for joining. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Daniela, and thanks, Elena and Sara, for your presentation. Actually, we are in two different offices, which are just in front of the others when we are in Milan. So my question, it's kind of a curiosity. I would like to understand, I mean, it's something similar to what Matteo Vignoli asked them. So there are two main questions from my side. The first one, it's what are the main differences that you measure in testing this application specifically with other AR experiences that you maybe developed and that you notice? So something which is related to the content and the technology element that you bring inside this experience. And on the other hand, I'm curious, since I have some interests in microplastics, I would like to know on the, so let's say content-wise, what you did through this experience in order to change the behavior, which kind of pollution you try to consider. Is it due to clothes cleaning or something else?
Thank you so much for your question. Right now, we didn't test this application with other AR application, but with another PowerPoint presentation with the same identical content, just to understand the potentiality of AR itself compared to another instrument for education. But for sure, we are planning to do it in the future to understand fully its potentiality. And also because the strategy that we applied, we chose to do an application to provide a systemic overview on the topic, really wide and on many aspects. And since we're talking about that, we also wanted to answer to your second question. So we tried to focus on many perspectives on the microplastic topic, from the overview vision of the global dispersion of microplastic in the oceans to the single microplastic element and its toxicity. And specifically, we also focused on the ecosystem, but also the living beings inside of these ecosystems, both the animals, but also the human beings. And on, for example, personal care products could be affected by the presence of microplastic, clothing, as you were saying, but also the possibility of microplastic in relationship to food, and to how we can make responsible choices also in our everyday life when we are interacting with these elements around us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does it also answer your question, Matteo, in relation to the content versus the AR technology?
Yeah, I was actually curious on how they were able to, put the PowerPoint into the AR. So what was the real killer, let's say, feature of the AR that they leveraged? Because I mean, from just doing the observation, would you do it the same? How would you suggest to leverage the potential of the technology? Maybe it's something that we can learn from.
Thank you for your question. Of course, as Sara was mentioning, we did a preliminary test with the questionnaire, and we had two groups of people: a control group that had the same information through a PowerPoint presentation, and an experimental group that had the same information through the Resized Plastic augmented reality educational tool that we designed and developed. And so we were able to investigate just the potentiality of the technology, not in relation to the topic itself, that was actually the same for the two groups, but speaking about the interactive and the challenge and the playfulness of the experience itself. So we had in the questionnaire part a session just related to the representation of the content through the augmented reality technology. So this helped us in identify the power of the technology in comparison to the normal.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm not getting what was exactly this feature. Like augmented reality for me, maybe I got it wrong, is like you project a reality on the real world. So yes. That was what was happening. So they were seeing through, like what was the experience that made it so compelling?
Through our application, the user could see some contents, so in augmented reality, through the use of a personal device, so a tablet or a smartphone. And it could actually also interact with this augmented reality content. So we provided some contents that could be visualized, some other that could be placed for the interaction. And we also had some information regarding text and audio tracks, both to provide the information about the microplastic issues in relation to the visualization content that we had. So basically, during the test, we took the same contents, so in form of text that we had inside our educational tool, and we provided the user with these topics in form of text through a PowerPoint presentation and images. So we were able to...
So you feel that the interactivity part was the more interesting one?
Yes, the interactivity, but also the possibility to have the multisensory stimulation by providing the audio tracks and the visual content both at the same time, and
also a more powerful instrument for storytelling compared to the PowerPoint presentation, for example. So a more fascinating narration for the viewer. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was a little confused about the PowerPoint and the video, because I think that maybe you could also test, a middle layer, like some audio visual, so that you really isolate the idea of one element in the augmented reality world that is actually making the difference. Because of course you can project audio video materials also with a screen, so that might give you better closely insight on what is it of this technology that makes the difference. And also if it's worth investing, as many universities are now considering whether to move to the metaverse. Is this worth? Is really providing better learning on what they should be investing? These really relevant questions.
And I'm not sure if it's possible, but if you could share with us, maybe in the chat, the PowerPoint and the AI, if we could try ourselves, would be super interesting. But my question was actually connected to the evaluation, because it was interesting that you had the two groups, so the control group and the group that you're actually testing the AR. And in questionnaires, we can usually see the change of knowledge about an area. We can maybe also see the intention to change their behavior. But I wonder, how did you manage to actually measure whether they change their behavior or not?
Yes, in our testing phase, we took inspiration from a well-established model, that is the technology acceptance model from Davis, who is trying to evaluate both the attitude, the behavioral intention of users, and so their perspective towards the behavior. But right now, the testing section, the sessions that we already performed are focusing on the impact of the application right after the usage. We are planning to also investigate further how in time this impact has an effect on the users of the application.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much for that. And let's now move to paper number 3. And this is about the challenges and opportunities for design collaboration in Africa and beyond. And we have lots of questions for you, Bernard. And the first question is from Nicolo. Would you like to ask this one as well, Nicolo?
Well, actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, actually, the question is pretty similar to the ones you asked, Daniela, right before me. Maybe slightly different, but I would like to understand a little bit more from your perspective and from the perspective of the Africa Design SIG, something on the trade-off among different SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you, Nicole. I think the comments are quite insightful. So in your case, what we looked at and more or less in our findings is that we need to ensure that there are trade-offs. Then we need to look at it as smaller steps towards ensuring that we do something that is context-based, and therefore when it's context-based or context-specific, then it's easy to be taken up by the people that we are trying to target. So whether it is environmental sustainability or it could be social sustainability, given that all these regions have their own more or less preferences. So if we target that way, then we can end up more or less having gains, but then the gains are systematic and then more or less acceptable.
Great, thank you very much for that. And maybe connecting to my question, you mentioned about the interest in Africa in working with the sustainable societal changes. Could you please maybe elaborate a little bit more on that in relation to the findings that you got from the survey?
Yes, thank you, Daniela. The key point, again, another very insightful question. The key point is that in Africa, we have a cultural aspect that is actually of benefit. So the culture is the culture of Ubuntu, which we say that it's actually about I am because you are. So if I look at it that way, then we find that much of what is done is not really done for an individual or for me. If I do something, I'm not doing it for myself, but I'm doing it for the community. So that becomes the basis, and it happens to be actually translated such that it's reflected in our findings, where we find that more of the aspects that the respondents and those who are attending the workshop and the survey also were indicating are aspects around social sustainability. I know, for example, here in Kenya, 7 years ago, there was a plan to start a coal plant, and it did not even take off at the onset, just because of the cultural aspects, as well as the of course, knowledge also being there around the environmental aspect. So it's a balance, ensuring that you have the knowledge, but then also the cultural aspect that supports the entire thinking. And then drivers, of course, perhaps something also to consider is around drivers, because you also asked something around drivers, is that most African countries are actually on a growth path. So it presents an opportunity for us, especially the aspect of knowledge sharing, to ensure that the growth is more or less in line with what we would like to achieve in the area of sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that this knowledge sharing element is also coming really strongly in Tim's question. Would you like to ask that one, Tim?
Yes, thanks for a nice paper, Benan, and a nice presentation. And my question is towards two SDGs in particular, where if we divide the globe up into the global north and the global south, as Willy Brandt did in 1985, the global north we're doing really badly in SDG 12 and SDG 13, so sustainable production and consumption and climate action. And what can we learn from you on the African continent there, which are doing better? That was the question I wrote, but actually connected to your last comment where you were saying that a lot of African countries are in growth. How can you embrace the growth without growing the you could say the negative impact in SDG 12 and 13, and use that maybe as a laboratory for how to disconnect growth of value creation from growth of production and consumption?
Thank you, Tim. I think that is again very interesting comments, and then the additional bit that you've also included. So I think that's where we come from as when I was speaking about also the knowledge sharing. We need a way to be able to disseminate information. It's very interesting that someone actually who's from the so-called global north visits or comes to Africa or Kenya in that case, because we have been having cases where, for example, students come to study in Kenya. They appreciate the moment they see how we handle matters, especially around the consumption aspects and climate action. There is a bit of a change of mind, and they appreciate how that is done. So we'll say dissemination should be, could be an avenue that should be there, whether it is through education or it could be through organizing workshops that we've been organizing barazas around the same also. So that way, then we can be able to, we can have that mutual effects, okay, that could have benefit to both sides. And then there is also something that we've also been doing, that is challenge-driven education, and it incorporates already inherently. We ensure that there is aspects around sustainability and design are inbuilt. But then within that, given that it's a platform or an avenue to ensure that then we can collaborate, it has been actually also another useful platform that has cut across actually a number of African countries and also the countries in the global north. In that case, KTH. I'm not sure whether I've answered all the questions. I know there is one you may have added. Have I? Or there's something you'd like me to add?
Maybe we can take it later, and then we don't take all the airspace.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And we have a final question for you, Bernard, from Matteo.
Yeah, I was curious if in your exploration you encountered the need to change the tools for the African context, like the concept of, for example, co-design that you were mentioning in your paper. I was wondering if it's exactly the same we might use in Italy or in Sweden or in some other places, as I think that the culture could be different, and maybe we need different practice. I don't know, some idea about different tools. It's there or not?
Yes, Matthew, again, a very interesting question. The way we were looking at it is to, first, there is a gap, or there is an imbalance, which we are referring to as the power differential. So the perspective that we are looking at it is that if there is co-design that is involving an institution from the global north and an institution from the global south, then we need to, that co-design should be felt in such a way that we have both, okay, we have mutual benefits. So first, that has not been that common, and I know there are a number of articles that have been written around the same, because you see, there is just the fact that the African countries are more strong on the social aspects. They sometimes volunteer, but then the other bit of the benefit of the other aspects is lost. So first, that is the gap that we try to address, just to highlight that and of course gather data around that. And then now on the tools, the changes on the tools. So far we have been using actually the same as you said for collaboration activities that we've been doing. Of course, the challenges are different across the different regions. So we have adapted based on the challenges that could be there. Yes, all in all, I will not say that we have. There is a specific tool that you customize, which you can then we can then showcase to you. So what I will say is that the challenges are diverse, and that's where it requires modifications or adaptations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's now time to move to the questions to you, Matteo, on the how might we tool that considers the planetary boundaries. And Nicola, your question first.
My network allows me. I'm experiencing network problems. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm simply reading it. Maybe I didn't get this properly, or maybe I did, but what your methodology aims at, it's something that deals with delivering of solutions at a planetary scale.
Okay, so maybe his connection is not working properly. I'll just read out his question. Can you give us some additional details on the testing with something that aims at a global scale?
Usually, especially when we design for sustainability, the sustainability aspect comes up at the last stages, like, you do sustainability analysis, LCA, and a lot of, engineering methodologies to assess whether your product is sustainable or not. And also, when you design that, most of the time, the projection that you do are basically on your product right now, projected into the system, of course. We think that by anticipating, the challenge when you formulate a problem statement, then the design team has better insight on how to, for example, design something that can scale up or can have a small scale, but then, can be moved to a community and then to a planetary scale. One of the example is on regenerative agriculture. We've been experimenting with several farms around the world of different models on how they could do regenerative agriculture. And by thinking at the beginning how is the challenge and how that can scale up from an economical model, then the different farms then they actually start to learn from each other and create better form of cooperation by imitation, which is an element that you consider for the beginning. For example, creating the network of trust from the first solution, or enabling a communication channel in a specific case through WhatsApp of different farmers, so that they could really learn from each other and scale up. If that is thought and designed from the beginning, it achieves better result than if you want to try to find at the end solutions in a context. So yes, indeed, we think that this is part of it. The other part that we observed in the workshop is that by enabling the thinking at systemic level, people are going to think at different levels. For example, okay, maybe I enable a solution at my, let's say, level, which is my company, but I also think in terms of policy on how policy can change to actually enable the sharing of the solution at a general level. And this is a thinking that it's very important. Most companies are blocked because they say, yeah, if I am doing this alone, then this is never going to work. For example, for organic farming, if we think on the same, let's say, example of before. But if I have like a policy change and I involve policymakers into my journey of innovation, then my example can be a lead example for others. We are just finishing a week that policymakers are really involved in understanding the Green Deal, let's say, examples. And so there are the instruments already in most policy body like the EU, also the national states, but our companies are not so familiar on thinking about involving those instruments from the start of the design process. Mm-hmm. They kind of think they're alone, but anticipating this, it gives them better chances to actually elevate the outcomes. I don't know if that answers your question, Nicola.
Well, actually, I don't get what's the part concerning testing in your answer, but I don't want to take too much time. I see that there are other questions, and maybe we can catch up later and talk about this.
Testing means that I have a solution, for example, regenerative farming, and I test it with policymakers to assess whether this can become a standardized approach, maybe involving incentives like in the agricultural sector, the PAC, that can be given in different ways. So in this way, testing becomes a political act, because you're not only testing for yourself.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, maybe we can catch up later and we will talk about the planetary scale, which is interesting from my side, as I think it has some chances to give a stronger impact. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess that probably the testing question actually connects to what exactly are the solutions that you are developing. And that was exactly Tim's question in there. Would you like to briefly ask that one, Tim?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's much time to answer, but it's just more about what can you give some insights into the types of solutions that your tool is prompting? Is it more lifestyle related solutions, business related, technical, or other? Just out of interest.
The how might we balance statement was aiming to address a gap. I mean, we did extensive literature research on sustainable design methodology, and we found a lot of tools that were, let's say, addressing many parts of the design process, but we couldn't find any that could actually was on the problem definition. So this element of synthesizing what the problem the team want to address, and most of the standard tools like how might we are based on the action of the design team. So how might we design team do something for this problem for these people, and so enabling to think about also the planetary scale in this moment, we thought it was good because instead of filtering later, you could already think about those issues upfront. And we've been testing with, for example, with communities in those hackathons, and those were regarding different challenges, like for example, how might we, like challenges in terms of sustainable agriculture. So how could we enable to design a more sustainable system for agriculture while ensuring economic prosperity to the people, because that is something that it's a trade-off, right? And so the solution were going into sharing of practices at the local level while ensuring education at the policy level for a territory. Those people were telling us that they were doing farmers market and having people asking for zucchini in the winter. So, I mean, how can you do some organic farming if people don't know that zucchini don't grow in winter? And they say, yeah, I'm not shopping here because I want my zucchini. And
I might need to stop you there, Matteo. I'm sorry. We are just on time. And just before saying goodbye and thank you to everybody, I just want to share my three main takeaways from this meeting. The first one is that there are opportunities of exploring new technologies such as AM and AR towards sustainable development. And this is mostly from papers 1 and 2. And also that the social and environmental interrelation and dependence is extremely important if we are to deal with the planetary boundaries at the same time as keeping the social justice. And finally, that it's important to collaborate and to discuss. So I hope that this small session is just the start of a much bigger discussion, and that I don't need to stop you any longer for the other times, but I hope that the connections will continue after this session. Thanks a lot for all the speakers, all the authors, and also all the great questions from the audience, and see you soon.
Thank you, Daniela, and all the authors. Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao, thank you. Bye-bye.